it's really not possible to put the genie back in the bottle once there's a system out there that can do some harmful thing. And I think that warrants a very different approach to how these things should be produced or regulated than other kinds of software. My name is Ben Garfinkel. I'm the acting director of the Center for the Governance of AI. I think there are a lot of essentially unknowns with the risks that AI will pose. The current trajectory we're on with large language models being increasingly used in the world is pretty different than lots of other forms of software progress. So one way to think about it is there's these large models which can do a really wide range of tasks, from generating memos to coming up with lines of code to writing poetry and things like this. And the way they're produced is basically you take a really large data set and you take a large pile of compute and you sort of churn through all this linear algebra, and at the end of it you get the system that has these very general capabilities. And often it's very difficult to predict what capabilities these systems will have or how people will use them. So people will release these models and they'll be able to do an extremely wide range of things. And then it'll only be after release that people realize, oh, you can use it to write code to make a game of Pong, or you can use it to do such and such, or you can use it to find software vulnerabilities. And what that means is we're in this regime where companies keep plowing forward and producing these increasingly sophisticated models, and they don't really know what features will pop out, and they don't know what desirable or undesirable features will pop out. So when it comes to something like Facebook, the way this works is not, oh, maybe next year Facebook will have all of these features it didn't have last year. Facebook has no idea what those features will be. They might not even know those features exist until users find them out. And so it's this trajectory on where it's very unpredictable what these systems will be able to do, and often you don't know until after the fact. I think at the moment, the way stuff works to a large extent is people make these models and they put them out into the world and we find out what they can do. And it turns out that sometimes what they can do is actually fairly damaging if they can produce fake images of real people. Or I think it's quite likely in the next couple of years we'll find out they can do certain things which are useful for cyber attacks, or potentially they can generate plans for doing harmful things in the world. And so if companies take this approach of you make it and you put it out there and then you find out what it can do, in a lot of cases it'll be a situation where there are all these harmful, damaging applications that people weren't aware. And then if the companies were released them broadly and let people download them, it's really not possible to put the genie back in the bottle once there's a system out there that can do some harmful thing, and it's possible to download it. Now there's this harmful thing that's out in the world and you can't do anything to unwind it. And I think that warrants a very different approach to how these things should be produced or regulated than other kinds of software. A number of the leading companies or developers in the space are increasingly taking the risks produced by these models fairly seriously. So I think in general, I would like to see things moving more slowly and there being more broad caution around how to produce or release these models. But for example, just the recent release of GPT-4, OpenAI spent about 6 months red teaming it and trying to really carefully remove certain possible ways it could be misused, and in general put a lot of manpower and time into trying to ensure this thing was relatively safe. And that's something that several years ago no company was really doing around their models. And I think there's a general trend in this direction. Like several years ago when OpenAI released a previous model, GPT-2, they decided not to immediately release the full model or let people just freely download it because they thought it might be misused. And the AI community was actually very upset about this because they thought, that slows down progress, that makes it less, easy to study for other scientists. And now I think there's been a bit of a change where I think people are taking it more seriously. They actually need to be quite careful how you release these things. I also expect the public broadly to be increasingly concerned about these things in a way that produces increasing pressure to be careful.